Good morning, members. It's time to start this special meeting of the Welfare Services Panel. I now call the meeting to order. Today's agenda is on this item: review of the planning and provision of social welfare services with reference to the deaths of a mother and son at Shan King Estate. On the table, you can see the 4 papers, including a submission and a response paper from the Housing Department. Let's invite the officials to join us now. Members, I have to leave at 12:45 p.m. sharp, so I'm not going to be able to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. The meeting will be adjourned at that time. We have Ms. Ma from SWD, Ms. Lui, also from SWD, and also Mr. Kenneth Wu from SWD. From the Housing Department, we have Ms. Jim. From the Education Bureau, we have Mr. Leung, Ms. So, and another representative from SWD, Ms. Chiu. Welcome. Thank you for coming. The case involving 2 deaths at Shan King Estate happened on the 7th of September. Of course, it has aroused a lot of concerns. There is still quite some mystery surrounding the case, and we wonder what caused the tragedy. Why there was no follow-up action taken for the 15-year-old boy there, and what's the service planning for Shan King Estate as a whole? Mr. Zhang Gokchu, the previous chairman of this panel, talked about problems at Shan King Estate, especially some problems with the property management contractor. And we have followed up the situation a number of times, but very little improvement has been seen. So here we'd like to take a look at the welfare services planning in the wake of this case. Well, this is a case more than something about single mothers. We want to talk about different policies, welfare policies, education, and also the problems and issues surrounding the TPS estates. So perhaps I can invite the SWD to walk us through the paper in brief, and then the Housing Department will be invited to do the same. SWD. Thank you, Chairman. As you have said, Chairman, we were given to understand that you would like to understand more about single parents and the support to them. So the paper is more or less focused on this particular angle. As for the case pertaining to this incident at Shan King Estate, we may not be able to tell you much about one particular case. But as you said, because in the wake of this case, we would like to see what more can be done in our services. So perhaps we can all explore the relevant issues and topics. And may I now begin by saying something about support services for families with single parent. We do this through the provision of family services. And we do this through the services rendered by integrated family service centers. And I believe members are aware that we have case management and counseling, and we also want to identify these families at an early stage. So we have different activities, different support groups aimed at early identification of their needs, and then proceed with the provision of appropriate services. Social workers would also assess the needs of families with single parents, including emotional needs and also the parenting support services. And we also set up mutual assistance, mutual help groups, so that these families can help each other in coping with the situation of single parenthood, and also through various activities we try to mitigate their problems and emotional stress. But some of the families are not easy to reach. So our IFSCs, ISCs, and also our medical social work program have set up a family support service to reach out to these families who don't really know much about the services available. And these would include victims of domestic violence, or the isolated families and individuals facing problems. Through telephone contact and reach out services, we go to them to introduce services to them so that they can participate in our activities, and that we can provide the services they need to them. And also we would recruit volunteers from similar backgrounds in a peer support program in order to reach out to these rather secluded community. And if families with single parents have financial needs, we can also provide support through the CSSA scheme. Apart from basic allowances under the CSSA scheme to meet their basic needs, families with single parent will also be given single parent supplement to address the special difficulties faced by single parents in taking care of a family. And now turning to child care services. We have daycare, day child care services, and after-school care program for these families in order to reduce the pressure these families face in parenting. We have child care centers, places, and also the neighborhood and temporary occasional child care service, catering for the needs of young children. And we also got this neighborhood support child care project to help families with children under the age of 9 in a flexible way, so that daycare services can be provided, and that we can foster mutual health and care in the community. At present, we can provide no less than 954 places in total. And there's also the after-school care program for children aged 6 to 12 whose parents are unable to take care of them because of work or other reasons. So the after-school care program is provided during the day, and we are providing about 5,600 such places.
For low-income families, we also have a fee-waiving subsidy scheme providing 1,800 full fee-waiving quotas for needy families. For after-school care services, we understand that there is a demand. Some low-income families might not be able to enjoy the fee-waiving subsidy. So starting from December, we will further relax the household income limit for low-income families for the fee-waiving subsidy scheme, and the pilot scheme will last 3 years in order to help more low-income families. So that's all for support services for single families. Thank you very much, Ms. Ma. We have the information on hand already. And I invited you to walk us through the paper so that the public would have an idea. There are various after-school care services and subsidies. If everything is in place, why have we seen so many challenges, and why have we seen incidents such as the one at Shan King Estate? I now invite the Education Bureau as well as the Housing Department to walk us through the paper. The government aims to safeguard the right to learn for children. Schools must comply strictly with the requirements of reporting students' non-attendance to the Education Bureau, and schools should report the cases on the 7th day of the student's continuous absence. Non-attendance cases from primary schools are handled by student guidance officers, teachers, or personnel, and the goal is for the students to resume school as soon as possible. The Education Bureau will follow up on the cases. In the lack of compelling reasons by the parents, the Education Bureau can issue an order for parents to reinstate their children in the school. The Education Bureau will examine these non-attendance cases, and they will work with schools in order to reach the parents and students. They will make home visits or liaise with their relatives or other government departments, and the goal is to resume the offering of services as soon as possible. The Education Bureau and student guidance personnel could refer the cases to the SWD or relevant social service providers so that they can provide the appropriate services. We will review the procedures for handling non-attendance cases, and we will also strengthen the collaboration and communication with relevant government departments to uphold the students' right to education. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. So. I'd like you to tell us how the review is progressing. And since the incident was reviewed on the 7th of September, you have been receiving a lot of media attention. So I'd like to know when you will begin the review and what is the progress. Housing Department, please. Thank you. As the paper mentioned, As for the planning for welfare facilities in new PRH developments, we briefed the panel in April, and a letter was sent to the panel from the SWD on 7th of July. Under the existing mechanism, when a development area or site is identified as having potential for PRH development, government departments will coordinate, having regard to community views, the provision of non-domestic facilities. The arrangement enables the SWD to explore the provision of suitable welfare facilities in a comprehensive manner at an early stage. And the SWD will take into account the needs of the local community, the overall demand for welfare facilities, the 4 area requirements for welfare facilities, etc. We will work with relevant bodies to address the demand for housing. And for government-funded welfare premises in HA's PRH estates, a nominal rent of $1 per annum plus a management and maintenance charge will be charged to non-government organizations nominated by relevant government departments or bureaus. Under the HA's established practice, eligible NGOs providing direct services of welfare or community nature to tenants are charged a concessionary rent for leasing of welfare facilities in public housing estates. The current rate for concessionary rents is $55 per square meter per month, exclusive of rates and government rents. The concessionary rent is subject to review by the HA's Commercial Properties Committee every 3 years. As of the end of August, there are about 1,480 tenancies led by the HA under the above arrangements for providing different types of welfare services. The updated list of vacant non-domestic premises is available on the HA and HD's website. Interested NGOs can submit applications to the HD, and we also regularly share the list with the SWD. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Chim. I'm not sure why you talked about the $1 concessionary rents or nominal rents. And we are talking about the role of welfare facilities in TPS estates. And very often the decision of the management companies or OCs could not be influenced. In Shan King Estate, we learned from the media that the welfare and education units face a lot of challenges. And in December last year, myself and Mr. Kim Yun wrote to you, and we filed written questions at the LegCo in April. So hopefully you can explain the situation. The floor is now open to questions from members. Each member will have 5 minutes, including question and answer. Mr. Poon Siu-ping and Dr. Fernando Chang and Mr. Andrew Wan. Mr. Poon Siu-ping, thank you. We certainly do not want to see such incidents happening again. The SWD talked about their support services for families with single parents, and you said that since 2007, the Integrated Family Service Centers and Integrated Services Centers, as well as the Family and Child Protective Services Units and Medical Social Services Unit in the psychiatric setting, will provide family support program services. It has been 10 years. So I wonder if the SWD has done any evaluation on the number of cases processed and whether you have enough support manpower. Have you come up with breakdowns of the services offered every year? You might be dealing with domestic violence, psychiatric cases, community violence, etc. Of course, you have included single-parent families. So I'd like to see if you have any breakdowns. You also employed volunteers and trained them for the services. So can you give us any details? And for the Education Bureau, according to the existing ordinance, non-attending students, cases of these students must be reported. So how many such cases have been filed every year? Have you analyzed the reasons for non-attendance? I do not know what the results are. SWD, please. Thank you. First of all, for the family support program, it started in 2007, and in 10 years, we approached 103,400 families. We have 4 major service units. For example, IFSCs will focus on relatively isolated families and individuals, while the Family and Child Protective Services units will deal with families with domestic violence. We want to approach them actively rather than wait for incidents to happen. So we want to have early identification and approach these families as early as possible. As of the end of June, about 4,395 volunteers were taking part in this program. We feel that such services would allow individuals to take part in community services soon, and we want to identify these families early on, especially the obscure families. And this requires the community network we have built, so we will continue to use these services to approach needy families. Thank you. Education Bureau, please. I will first talk about the number of non-attendant students. According to our latest figures, in the 15 to 16 academic year, in primary and secondary schools, for students under 15, we had about 1,700. For senior secondary students aged 15 or above, we had about 1,900. As for the reasons for non-attendance, as far as we know, the reasons were very complicated, and there was a variety of reasons, including learning and social bonding issues, family and parent issues, and in some cases, the students were mentally or physically unwell. Mr. Poon, you said over 10 years you had more than 100,000 cases. Have you assessed whether the service resources were adequate? Thank you. At our IFSCs, we would carry out preventative work. We have a 3-tier system, so in terms of resources, the resources have been included. So we have planned for the manpower resources. Education Bureau, you said there were 17,000 students aged under 15 and 1,900 aged more than 15 who were non-attending. Do you feel that these figures were high? These were figures of non-attending students rather than students who quit. So these refer to students who did not attend school for at least 7 days. If I'm to comment on these figures comparing with the previous years, over the last 3 years in primary and junior secondary schools, the number of non-attending students range between 1,600 to 1,700, and for senior secondary students, there was a substantial drop. And in 2014, there were 2,900, and in 15 to 16, there were 1,900. So I can only say that for senior secondary school students, there was a substantial drop.
For primary cases, the levels remain more or less the same as the last 3 years. Do you have further breakdown figures? For example, those who have stayed out of schools for more than 3 months? We don't have statistics on the time of non-attendance. So you have figures on 7 days, but not on 7 months. We don't keep statistics of this kind. Dr. Fernando Zhang, this is just one case. It doesn't involve a lot of people, but it's a tragedy. It's a mother and her son. They passed away in their home and no one knew for a long time. There's a need to review our education system, social welfare system, and also the neighborhood spirit of mutual care, mutual help. Ms. So of the Education Bureau said they don't have any statistics of non-attendance for more than 7 days. For example, how many of them have been staying away from schools for more than 6 months or a year? Well, this is, in my view, a problem in itself. According to the Education Ordinance, you have a number of things that you need to do. For example, if they have not been attending schools, you should for 7 days. You should get in touch with them, and referral for other services should be made. If the non-attendance continues, you are supposed to issue an attendance order, but you don't have figures on all these. How many attendance or notices have been issued? For how long have these students been not attending schools, and how many referrals have been made? If you don't have any of these figures, then you are just doing a perfunctory job. You're just trying to put up excuses. The community wants to know the reasons of their truancy or non-attendance. And the SWD says for the past 10 years, the IFSC has been trying to get in touch with more than 100,000 families which are rather isolated and are not seeking help proactively. Can you tell us why these isolated families could not be reached through your outreach services? Is it that some of them refuse to receive support services? And if so, why? Lastly, perhaps I can get the two departments to answer my questions first. Ms. So, are you being irresponsible for not keeping such statistics? Are you trying to sort of pull wool over our eyes? Well, it's a matter of fact that we have no such statistics but we have not issued any attendance order. In the past 5 years, no. No attendance order in the past 5 years. So you are saying that all the 7,000 or so non-attending students had no problems? If there's a case of non-attendance, the school and the education bureau's relevant team and counselors for the schools would follow up the case in question, will contact the parents, will try to understand the problems and provide support. If the parents do not give us sufficient and good reasons and insist that their children should not go to school, we can issue an attendance order by invoking the education ordinance. It doesn't mean that we issue an attendance order after a certain period of time has lapsed. For 7,000 students who are found to be absent for more than 7 days, how many of them resume schooling afterwards? Well, I don't have the figures with me. What's your impression? Did most of them return to school afterwards? Most of them did. If they did not go back to school, where would they have gone? Some would be in receipt of certain support services. Some were sick. Some had other problems physically or psychologically. If they did not receive any support service and they did not return to school, what would happen? Because you have zero attendance order issues during the time. Did they all come up with very good reasons for their non-attendance? We'll continue to try to understand their situation and provide suitable services. If they have family needs, we can make referrals to SWDs or other organizations. And if there are services by NGOs, we'll do it as well. Or some of them are already in receipt of relevant services. Chairman, this is odd. If the Education Bureau or we have a law saying that education is compulsory, but some young children stay away from the schools. So at least we have 1,700 primary school cases. These are under 15, of course. Some of them have not been attending schools for more than 7 days, and some of them did not after the cases have been handled. But the government did not find any problems with all these cases. All of them could give reasonable answers. But you can't tell us where these children have gone. The government should tell us what happened to these children who have been found to be absent for more than 7 days, and how many of them were referred to services, and how many of them did not return to their schools. And also, please tell us why you would accept that they are not required to be to return to their schools for education. For 5 years, you have issued no attendance order. One wonders whether the compulsory education policy is still there. In this case, is Mr. Master Leung. Did you issue any enforcement notice in respect of his case? We pay family visits, and we try to contact their relatives, but we could not contact the mother and the son in this case. How many attempts did you make? And before you concluded the case, and then you found out what happened to them afterwards. the schools and the social workers try to contact the parents and the student through various means, such as family visits and contacts, checking with family relatives, and also checking with the security guards of the building and neighbors. We could not get in touch with them. So how much time was spent from the time you started to try different things to the time you stopped and you concluded the case? The Education Bureau concluded the handling in middle 2012. Did you manage to knock on the door? Were you stopped by the security guard, or did you or you got no response after knocking on the doors? What really happened? Well, when we tried to pay a home visit, the address was found to be incomplete. So the relevant officer asked about the people in the housing estate and neighbors, but we still could not find the complete address. So there was, on no occasion did you manage to knock on the door because of the incomplete address. Well, that's really odd, but we can follow up later. Mr. Wan Xiuqin, I think you have asked some very reasonable questions. The more I hear, the more I'm alarmed. I know we have the safety nets, we have different policies and programs to take care of needy people. I hope officials will not think that we are trying to hold you personally accountable. This is a tragedy. We have people like these who are so seriously hurt, so we have problems. I would say that I'm more than shocked. The frontline officers try to contact certain people. Well, if I try to contact some a classmate and could not, if I try to contact a relative and during the Chinese New Year, I did not manage to get a response, I would certainly try to call other people, such as his or her classmate. And I believe that the government must have some way to try to find the relevant information. For example, it's a TPS estate. There must be some records kept. But what about manpower? Are you asking your officers to take care of, say, 100,000 cases for each and every officer? So we need to get all the figures. Can I have some information after the meeting? And that is in respect of the 3,000 odd cases. Please tell us the reasons for non-attendance. For example, if the children are sick, there must be different categories. And please also tell us the criteria for categorization, and also why there was no attendance or other issues. And you may say this is an isolated case, and this case managed to slip through the service, so there's a hole in the safety net for such cryptic families and hidden youth. Look at the youth centers, IFSCs. They include in their service scope the care and support of these families. But I'm afraid about the system and the policy. So maybe nominally these clients, these families are covered. But handling such cases require a lot of input and manpower and in-depth involvement and resources will be required. But are you just giving a perfunctory answer saying that they are covered in the service scope and yet nothing much has been done?
冇嚟，亦都冇交代，或者我哋冇以為佢有份嘅部門咧。
I'd like to talk about another department who is not attending today. While the SWD might be somewhat responsible, the Home Affairs Department actually has a role to play. As you know, they provide help to the mutual aid committees. And as I can see, most mutual aid committees are quite inactive. They are not playing their functions. I wonder if the government can provide me any details on these committees. If there are mutual aid committees, how can we better exercise their functions and expand the scope of coverage? Have support services been offered, and can you provide any figures? Thank you very much. He would like to know about the resources and the policy, and what is the work of the non-attendance case team. Our colleagues at the NACT are dealing with these cases. Our officers would follow up on the cases actively. For primary school cases, student guidance personnel would be the people responsible, while the NACT will work with them to supervise or support the cases. For secondary school non-attendance cases, the NACT will carry out the frontline work. Chairman, I'd like to know more about this. How about the number of officers? At the NACT, there are 6 inspectors and 6 assistant inspectors, as well as 15 officers. They are all staff of the EDB, right? Yes. So that means there is a total of 21 staff members. So these 21 persons will look at all the 3,000 cases in Hong Kong. So on average, each person will take care of 150 cases. As I said, for primary school cases, they were taken up by student guidance personnel or social workers. How about the follow-up approach? Can you tell us the number of home visits or telephone interviews conducted? I'm not asking about the specific cases. I want the overall figures. How many home visits were done? If you, for example, if you conducted 6,000 home visits, that means each person will have conducted a few hundred. We want to evaluate your performance. We have no such figures. For primary school cases, the school personnel would be the ones mainly responsible. I want to say that you can you have more resources for secondary schools, because for primary school cases, they are handled by school personnel. And that means you should have more resources for secondary schools. I need to know so that we can evaluate your work. Ms. So, even for primary school cases, well, how many What is the caseload for your 21 workers? How many home visits were done? How many telephone conversations were done? You must have these performance indicators. We have no such figures. So how can we evaluate your work? Each case carries its own record, and our officers will record the progress of their follow-up. This is certainly cause for concern. I'm sure your colleagues have been working hard. I think the manpower is inadequate. If you have 20 officers taking care of all those 3,000 cases, because many of these cases require intensive follow-up. Apparently, there is a lack of follow-up. Usually, you will give us the figures and we will follow up. And so this is certainly problematic. So how can the inspectors carry out their jobs? Do you seriously have no figures to share? Do you think your colleagues can give us any figures? If you did not have them, can you begin now? Under NACT, we have inspectors, assistant inspectors, and student guidance officers. And when the officers take care of the cases, inspectors and assistant inspectors will examine the approach used by the officers. And as I said, we have no figures, but it doesn't mean that we do not know what our colleagues are doing. So do you know how many cases are carried by those 21 officers? I don't have the information on hand. Please provide them afterwards. Mr. Eddie Xu. Thank you. I think it's important to have figures so that we can talk about responsibility. But I have a more fundamental question. We are talking about 1,700 and 1,900 students in primary and secondary schools. Can the EDB promise not to drop any cases? For the case of the student, Mr. Leung, the case was offloaded in 2011 to 12. And if you offload a few cases every year, we would have a lot of these problematic cases. So is there a policy burden for students who are not attending school for 7 days? Can you guarantee that none of those cases would be dropped? And I have another question for the housing department. If a student lives in a TPS unit, when we, well, according to the news, there is no electricity and water supply, and they are defaulting on rents. Is the housing department aware of the situation? For occupied units with no supply of power and water, and rent has not been paid, how will you follow up on these cases? If you ignore them, I will have a very big question mark. Education Bureau first, followed by DHD. when dealing with certain cases which cannot be traced, if we are not able to make home visits or phone conversations or letters, if we cannot approach their parents for follow-up, well, we will look at the specific situation. For example, for students living in public housing, NACT will inquire the latest address from the housing department. For parenting issues, we will notify NGOs or the IFSCs of the Social and Welfare Department. For students who indicated that they would leave Hong Kong, we might inquire their records from the Immigration Department. If all means are exhausted and we still do not know their whereabouts, we will consider closing the case. Housing Department, please. Thank you very much. For defaults of rent payments, if the relevant tenants require assistance, we would work with the SWD. There would be other means available to offer help to tenants, and that's what we will do. Well, are you aware that the water and electricity supply has been cut off for some units? Would you know about these cases? Well, it depends on the scenario. Well, the scenario is that there's no water and electricity. Some units have not paid rent, and subsequently their power and water supply has been cut. Are you aware of these situations? We would assess the situation during home visits. Will you make home visits for households who do not pay rent? So would you make home visits for households with water and power supply cut off? We will conduct home visits within a specific time frame, and if there are other needs, we will also make home visits. Well, technically, would the housing department know that the power and water supply has been cut off for a specific unit? And if you learn about it, what will you do? So technically, will you know? We would only know about it when we assess the situation. Sometimes we would receive reports. Well, the WSD might know, and Hong Kong Electric or CLP might tell you that power has been cut for a specific unit. Is there any notification mechanism in place? As we know, this flat has not had its power and water supply cut. What about the default of rents? Generally, for tenants with rent defaults, we will offer recommendations. For example, there is a rental subsidy scheme in place, or they can approach the SWD. Will the Water Supplies Department, HAE, or CLP work with the Housing Department to notify you of power and electricity cuts is there such mechanism in place? We will look at the situation later. For this case, did the housing department make any home visit? I have no information on hand. Mr. Roy Kwong, please. Chairman, we are having a meeting today because of an unfortunate incident, and we are exploring a review. But what we have heard so far is highly disappointing. Our frontline workers are very busy, but all the signs were there. So I would like to know whether there is a list of vulnerable households which demand urgent attention.
So the utilities are terminated. Do you know? Did you know? Would you ask the SWT to provide support? You're not saying that they haven't approached us for help. So it's difficult to find these hidden cases. So let's all work together. Just imagine if your neighbors are acting rather strangely. They are not seen to be going in and out very regularly. So we should try to persuade more people to care for their neighbors. For example, we should talk to the property management company or the security guard there. Did the security guard try to get help from the housing department? Or would the housing department be dealing with this case as a rent not pay cases? Or are you trying to find if the water supply has been cut? Well, you are looking out for cases of abuse of your resources by looking at the water consumption records. So shouldn't the departments be working together? If you say there's no mechanism, the power company won't tell me, the WSD, the water supply department will not tell us. So let's build a system. If all of a sudden the water supply is cut, the power supply is cut, and the housing department should be helped, and then the housing department should try to find out the problem. So you should have the awareness. You may say that I work for the housing department. I don't know how to provide welfare service. In this case, the two people died for a week without anyone knowing it. If someone was able to take just one more step in helping the son, he might survive. Do we have a list of these isolated people, a list of isolated families? And also the education bureau should reconsider whether a case should be concluded if you fail to get in touch with the relevant people after some time. I know if you knock on the door and the persons inside do not open the door, you can do nothing. Are you going to check such cases? And would SWT try to find out these serious cases? If they knew how to seek help, they wouldn't be in such a situation. Now they would rather die than telling people that they have problems. Can we learn more from these telltale signs? So, do you have a list of such cases? So these are direct questions. Housing Department.
多謝議員提問嚇。
Thank you for your questions. On the part of the Housing Department, we don't have a list of these so-called hidden or isolated people. If we know that the power supply and the water supply have been cut. We will try to understand why. If the tenant needs to get help or some referral services or just get some suggestions, we'll do this. What if there's no need for referral? If you find out that the utilities have been cut for some time, and then you ask whether they need any referral services, and the answer is no, would that be the end of the matter? Or are you going to talk to the district social welfare office saying that something is amiss here? Would you do this? If we make the referral, we need the consent of the parties concerned. Of course, consent is important. I've dealt with difficult cases in the housing estates. Are you going to inform the SWD? They have the social workers, but they cannot get in touch. I would like to know whether the housing department would do just one more thing. The consent of the party would be important. But if you do nothing, they may die. So are you going to disclose the necessary information so that help can be provided? As I've said, if we have to make a referral or disclose the information of the relevant people, we need the consent. Did you ask? Did the party said that they did not give you the consent, or you didn't ask? There was no request received in this case. Of course, they died. I know it's not the job of the housing department. You are just responsible for managing the housing estates. You offer them housing. The problem is there are telltale signs. Someone know about this, but the information is not passed on. If the relevant person knew about the need to refer the case, the son wouldn't have been absent from the school for so long. Would you set up a mechanism to identify special cases? Can you be more proactive so that without the consent, you can seek a professional help from SWD?
基於私隱嗰個關係咧。
So privacy concerns, we need the consent of the party concerned. We need consent. As for whether are there other approaches, if that's the case, then perhaps the housing department should engage your own social workers. You're not going to get the consent without their consent. We have to consider privacy. Well, I know what's the one of the causes of the broken chain of operation. I think that the answers from the government are rather passive. From the housing department, we know that if rent is not paid, there is no special mechanism to recover the rent. Mr. Kwong has already said, it's not that there were no telltale signs. The rent is not paid. You cannot find the tenant. I have surfed the website of HAD. You deal with cases of illegal subletting and moving out without telling you. Do you adopt the same position on privacy in dealing with such cases? If cases cannot be followed up, are you going to do the same? If that's the case, public housing resources cannot be properly utilized. We are complaining about the shortage of housing supply, and people are waiting for a long time to be allocated PRH flats. And now you have vacant flats vacated without informing the department. And how can you identify such cases and recover the flats? Housing department. if rent is not paid, we try to contact the tenant. If that cannot be done, we would try other means. For example, we contact other people who might be able to know how to contact the tenant. We would do all these to try to contact the relevant tenant. How do you do this? It seems that you are very relaxed about this. If it's a private tenancy, the landlord will of course proceed with re-entry. For the housing department, how are you going to deal with rent not paid cases?
我講啦，咁就係話喺我哋即係手頭我哋有嘅聯絡資料咧。
We try to use the contact information we have, and different ways will be attempted to try to contact the tenant. If we still do not get in touch, we may suspect that the flat has been vacated, and then we'll deal with the case in accordance with our policy. All right, if you phone the tenant, you cannot get in touch, we'll try to knock on the door. Let's say rent has not been paid. How do you recover the arrears in rent? It's very simple, Mr. Chim. The different methods mentioned by the member will be used. For example, telephone calls and visits. And how many calls would you make, and how much time would you wait before you make the calls or pay the visits? Can you tell us more? It depends on individual cases. If we can get in touch with the tenant over phone, of course we can communicate with the tenant. And if it's a visit to the flat, we will look at the time made. It's difficult to generalize. Don't try to give partial answers every time. You can tell us how much time would elapse, and then you make phone calls, and then after several attempts, you certainly you go for family visit. I don't think it's a case-by-case system. You must have some guidelines. We have a procedure to follow. We'll issue a letter, and then we'll try to contact the relevant tenant. If we manage to contact the tenant, or we can get in touch through a visit, then we'll discuss the matter with them. And if we fail to reach the tenant, we may suspect that the tenant is not living there. For example, the flat has been vacated, and then we would proceed to the repossession of the flat. That's what we want to know, the details of the guideline or procedure. We're talking about public funds because the unpaid rent is public funds. It seems that you don't have any concrete guidelines and procedure. But from what I've heard from you, there's a procedure. And now I know that you would do certain things. I don't need to answer further questions. Dr. Fernando Zhang and Mr. Andrew Wan would like to raise questions in the second round. Other members who haven't asked questions will be given priority. Dr. Fernando Zhang, according to the Education Bureau, you cannot find the address. It's puzzling. All students will have to supply the address to the school, to you, because the school places in primary schools are allocated on a district basis. And in the housing estate, you try to find this a person with the property management people, and you failed. But Shan King Estate is famous in that there's a joint concern group by 10 social welfare agencies and schools writing to the Transport and Housing Bureau, campaigning against the property management company for stopping people to make visits to the elderly clients. The schools are not allowed to open windows. Kindergartens are not allowed to install CCTV. And the residential care home for the elderly was not allowed to use the garbage disposal facilities. And the school buses are not allowed to alight, to let students alight in the vicinity of the estate.
But the housing department could not do anything. Some of the problems were solved, for example, for requirements such as no opening of windows at schools. The EMAX prohibited them from opening their windows, but they cited safety reasons. But there are safety barriers. But the EMAX asked them to remove the barriers and then say there are safety concerns. The housing department could not do anything. And for needy families, the Education Bureau failed to do a proper job. So how many cases have the EDB received which could not be followed up on? How many such cases were there? And for the housing department, with regards to the management of estates like Shan King Estate, you talked about long-standing practice. The management company stopped these home visits, and you asked their volunteers to share their personal data. So a lot of these problems still exist. Why isn't the housing department doing its job? So for obscure families and elderly people living alone, they fail to receive services. What will the housing department do? EDB followed by the HD. I'd like to talk about a lack of detailed addresses. All parents and students must provide their addresses to the EDB. And sometimes parents do not provide correct addresses, and as such, home visits cannot be made. And the responsible officers had to find other ways to identify the right addresses. A lot of means have been exhausted to get in touch with the relatives of the students, for example, through security staff of the buildings. So in how many cases did you fail to approach the families? I have no such information on hand. Housing department, please. Shan King Estate is a TPS estate, and they have an owners corporation. The OC assumed the management control, so the approach to property management is the same as other properties. They are bound by deed of mutual covenants, etc. The daily management is conducted by the owners corporation and management company according to the DMC, and OC meetings are convened when necessary. As one of the owners of the TPS units, we understand that certain NGOs would have certain considerations of the estates. All along, we have been working with the relevant organizations, and members talked about an alliance. And ourselves, EDB and HAD would meet these organizations from time to time. And after that, we will relay their comments to the Owners Corporation for consideration. We had more than 10 meetings since 2015. And of course, the management companies and organizations had different considerations, and we saw that some progress was made with regards to their concerns and requests. Some problems have been solved, while others have made ground. For outstanding problems, we will continue to make use of this approach. To this day, rehab buses could not stop at the doorstep, and the elderly people and persons with disability are forced to walk 100 meters to board the bus. Currently, the owners' corporations have total control. Even if you hold 80% of the ownership, you could not say anything. For welfare organizations and schools, they serve the residents, so the welfare of those residents are ignored. So is it that the owners corporations and management companies have total say? You hold more than 60% ownership, but you could not do anything. Ms. Chim has been saying that they have been working actively. So what does that actually mean? So the rehab bus and school service could not reach the doorstep of the schools, and they could not borrow the basketball courts, etc. They were possible at Shan King Estate until 2009, when the Owners Corporation and Management Company assumed control. For Seng Kong Hui, Neighborhood Watch Center, Lutheran Center, they cannot even offer normal services. Last week, I went to the annual meeting of a rehab center. They told me they could not even install a smoke lobby door because they could not obtain a license. You said you have been working very hard in the negotiations. You did hold meetings, but what about the outcome of the negotiations? Thank you very much. For rehab services, some progress has been made. For the relevant road in the housing estate, the managers had to make sure that the emergency evacuation access remains clear for drivers and pedestrians, and the managers have provided a lay-by area nearby. And individuals with needs can use can reach the service units via a clear path. So through our intervention and services, we have we have made some grounds. For inadequacies, we will continue to communicate with the managers, and we'll try to explore feasible options. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, Dr. K. Kwok, and Mr. Yip Kin Yun. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, please. Chairman, I'm just here, so if I have repeated what I have said, please remind me. To be honest, for obscure elderly people, young people, or families, there is a lot of concern among the community. But we should not underestimate the challenge or difficulty in locating these obscure families or individuals. We have very high expectations of government departments. So despite the difficulty, we still have to identify traces in order to identify these obscure elderly people and young people. So are we really willing to invest resources given the low efficiency or chance of success? So are our frontline workers sensitive enough to these cases? Obscure families and individuals are very hard to identify because they are often very quiet. It's not normal for primary school students to not attend school. Some NGOs are providing services under a lack of funding, which is very difficult for them. And for non-attendance cases which are ignored by schools, would the EDB follow up? Will they try to find out more? Even if the chances are slim, would you still try to collect more information and evaluate the need to offer more resources and services? Perhaps you could sniff something, but a lot of people are not very sensitive. So can we enhance the sensitivity of frontline workers? Of course, it's impossible to eliminate all these cases, but at least we should do our best to prevent these cases. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have you actually done your best? Perhaps that's something for the government to say. These obscure families or individuals still carry certain traces. You can still locate their information from schools, but according to the EDB, some of them are not providing accurate addresses. So how many students can still go to school without providing the right address? So for obscure young people and elderly people or families, will you put in more resources? EDB, please. How many students can still go to school despite a lack of address or accurate address? All students must offer their address to the schools and education bureau. And in this case, the parents did provide the address to the EDB and school. But when a home visit was made, we found that the address was not correct. In other words, there are different blocks in Shan King Estate, but no specific information was given. Well, information was given, but some information was lacking. So the EDB could not contact the parent or student. School allocation is based on address. I'm not too sure about the situation in Tuen Mun, but school principals, teachers, and administrators would certainly know whether an address is correct or approachable. Well, right now you would not check the address. They can write whatever they want. They can say that they still live on Saturn. And are you saying that they did not specify the block number or the block name?
Well, there are a few blocks, and the information does not contain the right information on the block. SWD on hidden youth and families, what support will be provided for these hidden individuals and families in need? Is the more important that we need to get in touch with them, to introduce services to them, so that they would have access to suitable services. If these people are rather passive, and we have a 65 IFSCs, so we would make use of the district networks to cater for the needs in the local community. So through the Family and Child Protective Services and Medical Social Services Unit and the Integrated Family Service Centers, we try to get in touch with these individuals and families in need. And under the program, Family Support Program, through such service units, when this was introduced in 2007, it was a dedicated program. We gave more resources to these units.
Sorry
for my interruption. I would just like to know, how do you assess these cases? How many are there according to your estimation? And how much do you have in terms of manpower and resources? Sufficient or not? If you have increased the provision of resources, but it's still inadequate, then it's inadequate. Please tell us whether they are sufficient. But please don't try to mingle everything together. We're talking about hidden individuals and families. Do you have special resources and measures for them? And as I've said, we have the special family support program to reach out to these people. We have provided additionally 60 officers in help them. And the work is a continual one, and we do not just rely on this program alone to help them. And that's why we have the integrated family service centers, because we need to leverage on the district support network, and we need other units to also chip in. There are 65 units, and you add 60 officers. Which 5 units was denied the additional resources? Well, we're talking about the manpower provision. And work is not just about this particular aspect. In the integrated family service centers, we have street exhibitions in the housing estates and on the street. So in other words, the 60 are not dedicated to this particular service. Well, are they trying to say that the resources are sufficient, but they are still not doing an adequate job? So he has given you a very good suggestions. If you don't have sufficient resources, say so, and we'll help you. For these groups of people, they require proactive reach out on our part. And we are doing this on a continual basis. And to get in touch with these people, we need district work. We need collaboration in the district by different units to identify these hidden families and youth. For the hidden youth, I know that in terms of youth work, we are also doing something dedicated measures. We have dedicated measures for them. Hidden youth. We are subsidizing NGOs in providing youth work on the prevention, development, and remedial programs through the integrated youth centers, the outreach social work teams, and school social work. School social workers will try to get in touch with these hidden youth and provide suitable services and support. And we also cooperate with the district integrated family service centers. Social workers would get in touch with these young people, establish a relationship. Well, you don't need to go on. I know more about this than you. I must say. But for hidden youth, you are saying that they are one of your target clients. You have a school social workers, you have outreach social workers. You will cover them, but there's no dedicated team for hidden youth, right? Or it's done through the integrated social worker teams. So they are not excluded on purpose, but they will not be provided with dedicated and exclusive service. Dr. Kokake, we have a youth commission on youth, responsible for international exchanges with the mainland, with the youth square. We have lots of things with carrying the title youth, but the government ignores hidden youth, hidden families. Ms. So tells us in 2006 there were 118,500 hidden youth, and Hong Kong youth estimated there were about 40,000 hidden youth. What's the government's estimation of the number of hidden youth? And you have 65 service units and 60 officers. How many of them? How many of the hidden youth did you manage to reach out to in the past year? Well, I just don't know what they have been doing. We have the family support program serving clients who are not proactive in seeking help. We're talking about families and individuals. Over these years, we have been able to get in touch with all these people. How many? From 2007 up to the June this year, we have managed to manage 103,000 families of young people. If you have done such a good job, we shouldn't have this incident at Shan King Estate, right? Well, let me put it this way. The child stayed out of school for so long. If you have done such a good job, how come there was no one from the social department, social welfare department, or the education bureau getting in touch with him? Let's take a snapshot approach. Up to 2016, how many of these people have you successfully contacted? Just for 2016, 2017, we have managed to contacted 9,350 families and individuals. So the conservative estimation is 40,000, and they have managed to get in touch with 9,000. If they know how to seek help, there's no need for you to seek them out. If they need to get help from schools or social workers, they wouldn't have their problems. These are people which require outreach and proactive reaching out before you can get in touch with them. Let me put you this further question to you. Do you think that the government should set up an objective that all hidden youth, especially those in single family, in families with single parent, you should get in touch with all of them? Do you agree there's a need to get in touch with them? If so, what sort of resources and manpower will be required to support this particular objective? Ms. Ma. For hidden individuals and families and their needs, the government attaches a lot of importance to serving them. So we would be proactive in trying to reach out to contact them. But it doesn't mean that once we have managed to get in touch, it's the end of the matter. We believe that this is an ongoing effort, and we need to continue to get in touch with them in the district. For the 30,000 or so that you have not been able to get in touch, do you agree that you need to reach out to them? And if so, how much will you require? How much manpower and resources will be required in order you can get in touch with these 30,000 people? We do this through different channels. For example, units in collaborations with us to contact them and to provide information. This mechanism requires ongoing efforts. I understand. I'm not dumb. You have exhausted all the channels available and resources to you. You have managed to handle 9,000 cases. My question is, according to the Hong Kong University's estimation, there are 40,000 of them. What about the remaining 30,000 or so? Thank you for your question. We will continue to proactively reach out to these families, and through different channels, we'll try to get in touch with those individuals and families which are so far out of the coverage. So they are saying that I've done what I've been able to do, then for those who are not yet covered, you have to wait. Would you SWT accept the Hong Kong Youth estimation that there are 40,000 of them, hidden youth? The number of hidden youth can be as high as 40,000, according to that survey. We need to work harder on hidden youth. We'll continue to expend more efforts in youth work. You have deliberately chosen not to answer my question. Is that a strategy? My question is clear. In 2014, Hong Kong Youth estimated there were 40,000 hidden youth. You said you are going to expend more efforts. I asked whether you accept that estimated figure. If you can't answer the question, can you ask Ms. Chiu to answer the question? She's on youth work. We don't have this figure on our record.
冇呢個記錄定係我哋冇呢個數。
We don't have this figure on our record. Are you trying to get a figure? We don't have any projectable figure on our record for the time being. Are you going to get one? We don't have this projector figure. Are you going to try to get a projector figure? You don't have an estimated number of hidden youth. For the fourth time, let me ask you the question. Are you trying to get one? I don't have this at the moment. And perhaps we would need to take a look at whether we should get a figure. So are we trying to have a big carrying exercise? You don't have this figure. I know that. Are you going to get one? Are you going to have one? With regard to the figure provided by the Hong Kong U. We try to contact the Hong Kong U and follow up on whether service can be improved. You have a figure for street sleepers, although it's different from the figure from based on community assessment. You can say that you don't accept the 40,000 provided by the Hong Kong U, then you should try to get something on your own. Or you can say, I don't need such a projected figure. A hidden youth is a non-problem. There's no need to make yourself so difficult. Mr. Yip Kun-yin, I'm not a member of the panel. I'm grateful for this chance to ask questions. I have a question for the Housing Department. I'm very concerned about the situation at Shan King Estate.
Mr. Shiu Ka-chun has met district bodies. The situation of Shan King Estate is unique in that many people cannot understand the arrangements of the owners corporation and management company, and these have caused a lot of inconvenience and difficulty for schools and welfare organizations in the area. I'm sure the Housing Department is aware of that. And Ms. So said they would follow on that. Will the government its statutory powers in the owners corporation in order to influence its approach? And in the owners corporation, does the government have any statutory power, and do they intend to use that power? Mediation has been conducted for a few years now. If such efforts are not effective, should the government exercise its powers, if it has any? As for the non-attending students, the Education Bureau will make home visits. But they said that the addresses are incomplete, so they could not continue. In terms of the standard procedures, when conducting home visits, they might encounter cases of incomplete address. And would they stop their work, or will they continue? Hong Kong Post manages to deliver a lot of letters with incomplete addresses. Apparently, they have some experts to take care of these. For non-attending students with incomplete addresses, do you know that the cases could be very serious? So can you tell us about your standard procedures on what you will do in those cases? Housing Department, followed by the EDB. Thank you. As we said, for TPS estates, once owners corporations are set up, the management will be similar as private housing estates. They have to comply with the laws, land lease, and DMCs. We have been communicating with the managers on the wishes and requests of users, and we have made progress in some areas. For example, the lay-by area, the basketball court, etc. They were results of our comments made in meetings, and managers were able to provide more venues for users. As for home visits, there are specific procedures such as visitor registration, and for organizations, for security reasons, certain information must be provided. These are examples in which communication has achieved positive results. My question was, in an owners corporation, there are major owners, and I heard that the government is also a major owner. And as a majority owner, can you influence the decisions of the owners corporation, and under what circumstances will you exercise such powers? Thank you very much. Well, we are one of the owners of the TPS units. We only have one vote in the owners corporation, and we have offered our views to OCs, and we have achieved positive results. As one of the owners, we do have certain rights, but our policy has been to encourage management by the owners themselves, and they can manage their own daily matters. We also encourage them to communicate with the stakeholders. What is the percentage of ownership? I don't have the specific figures. It would be about 50 or 50-something percent. So it exceeds 50%, right? You said you would encourage owners to take part in the participation. What about the participation of the government as a majority owner? If the government merely asks other smaller owners to take care of the management, does it mean that the government has turned its back on its responsibility as the majority owner? We encourage owners to safeguard the rights of all owners. We will consider the rights of all owners, and we will try to narrow out differences through constant communication and negotiation. So your role is different. It is the same as if you have no right of ownership at all. The mode of management of an estate with an OC is same as that for private properties. The management company would have to deal with the management of the estate based on the laws and land leases, etc. You said you have been working hard, but there will be a 14th meeting on the 13th of November. It will be the 14th joint meeting. I invite you to attend that meeting. I will invite other welfare services panel members to attend as well. So let's meet to discuss how the situation at Shan King Estate can be improved. Ms. Chim, thank you for your invitation. We will try to look at our schedule and respond to you. Education Bureau, can you please tell us about the standard procedures? In case of incomplete addresses, we will not stop our work. And as I said, the block number has not been specified, and our officers have searched all blocks. And they have asked the management personnel, but they still could not locate the right information. If we could not trace the addresses according to our procedures, for students living in public rental housing, our officers will approach the housing department. And for students with parenting issues and are receiving services from NGOs, we will get in touch with the SWD or the NGOs in order to secure the latest information. If a student is out of town, we will ask for the records from the immigration department. So those are our current procedures. Could the information provided by the SWD or HD help you locate the persons you're looking for? We did not approach the housing department, but we did approach the SWD. If these are the standard procedures, why didn't you consult the housing department? I was explaining our current procedures. And I admit that there was room we could do better. Do you mean that these are the new standard procedures? Currently, all officers must follow the standard procedures. So, were these standards new or they have been in place for some time? Since 2013, we confirmed that all officers must follow the established procedures when following on the cases. In the past, our officers would exercise their own judgment when following up on the cases. So the standard procedures were only in place since 2013. Of course, it's good to have made progress, but before 2013, there were tragedies which could have been avoided. So this is regretful. Hopefully you can do more starting from now. And hopefully you can follow up more actively. We are coming to an end today. Ms. Andrew Wan and Vice Chairman, my apologies because you won't have enough time. I'd like to thank the SWD, Education Bureau, and the Housing Department for attending. But for a lot of the questions, the responses have not been satisfactory. We hope that in terms of policy and measures, we can do something to help. We should not wait until another tragedy happens before we meet again. We do not want to hold these special meetings. So for the figures promised, please provide them after the meeting. So, Ms. Chin, please check your schedule on whether we can meet on the 13th of November. On the 4th of October at 9:30, we will have another open hearing on the center.